Welcome to the Full Monty and a Cup of Joe. Do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast and leave a positive rating and review for us. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get into this. Monty. College
Joe.
football week 1 is in the books.
Yes.
And we got a lot
excited
to talk about. Well, let's talk about that SEC. Is the SEC overrated? Florida got beat by Miami. Texas A&M lost to Notre Dame, and then LSU lost to USC. So 3 pretty historically good programs in that league, all losing on the first week. So what's your take on that?
I think for me, the really only ugly loss or bad loss there is to Miami. And I don't think that the Florida loss to Miami in and of itself is bad, but I think that the 24-point blowout by Miami is bad. If that game would have been closer, a one-score game or maybe even an overtime game or whatnot, then it's okay. But you get beat by 24 points by Miami, even though, they're number 19 and they're supposed to be on the upswing. It's not a good look. And Florida's not the Florida of old by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think that the Texas A&M loss to Notre Dame or the LSU loss to Southern Cal are nearly as bad as that Florida loss to Miami. Now they are, like I said, they're not the Florida of old. Billy Napier might be lucky to actually make it halfway through this season. If Florida pulls or somebody pulls off a couple of unexpected wins against Florida to teams that they're traditionally not supposed to lose to, then it could be a situation where you find them without a coach here quickly.
And he got on some of the fans on Twitter on X in his post-game press conference. That wasn't too bright, I didn't think.
Well, hey, the guy's got a $26 million buyout. So at this point in the game, I mean, could he just be trying to tick off as many people as he could just to see if he can get fired without cause? I mean, hey, if you're going to give me $26 million to ride off into the sunset, I'm going to take your $26 million and go. So maybe at this point, he's just realized in his own mind, I can't do anything with this. And maybe he's just let it go and he's just waiting for the axe to fall. I don't know. It certainly doesn't look like they're really trying to do anything to turn it around. It looks like they're mired in less than mediocrity at this point in the game. They'll win this weekend. If they don't, then he will be fired this weekend if they don't beat Samford. That's you better pull that off. Right after that, you got Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State to finish the year. Looking through that schedule,
that's tough.
But if Texas A&M is decent and they took that loss to a good Notre Dame team, then Florida better watch out coming up against Texas A&M. Now, Mississippi State should be winnable, I would think. Mississippi State shouldn't, I don't think, present an overwhelming challenge for Florida. They may beat them. That's an away game. That's in Starkville. So, it's a long way from Gainesville. Central Florida at home. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't know how bad this Florida team is. I know that Samford looks like a win, but Texas A&M at Mississippi State, Central Florida at Tennessee, that's a tough row right there. Who knows what Kentucky's going to do? South Carolina's going to find that out this weekend. They got Georgia after Kentucky. You know what they can do. Then after number 1 Georgia, they got at number 3 Texas. You're probably not going to win that one. Then you got LSU coming to Gainesville, and then Ole Miss, who is projected to be a potential player in the playoff. So it could be a very long year in Gainesville. I mean, it could be a 3-9 or 4-9, 4-8, maybe 5-7 year for Florida. It doesn't look good. But as far as the SEC as a whole, I don't think that the SEC as a whole is down. They went 13-3 on their opening weekend. Out of the 16 teams in the SEC, 6 of them shut out their opponents. And out of the 16 teams in the SEC, 10 of them didn't allow a touchdown. So that's a pretty strong showing by over half of your conference.
Yeah, and
South Carolina.
I also saw an article that said the SEC set the record for most 60-point victories in one day in the AP poll era, which goes back to 1936. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't play anybody. Bama beat Western Kentucky 63-0. Ole Miss beat Furman 76-0. Tennessee beat Chattanooga 69-3. Auburn beat Alabama A&M 73-3. So these are not very good teams at all. But the question I had for you is this also a product of these teams trying to make a statement and potentially getting picked for the 12 team playoff, that they're putting the gas down, trying to blow out these teams and make a statement?
Could be a lot. I think that there's a big unknown this year going into this year's playoff, and we're not exactly sure how the cards are going to fall with that. It's obviously not just going to be left solely to record. We do know that conference champions are safe, but aside from conference champions being safe, if you're outside of that conference championship picture, let's say you're a 1-loss or a 2-loss non-conference champion, and through whatever coincidences, whatever happenings, let's say you got a 3-loss conference champion and you're on the outside and didn't even make it to your conference championship for whatever reason with 2 losses, then yeah, I mean, that those style points, as we call them, may come into play. That may be part of what's going on, or it may just be the talent gap is that big. I mean, Ole Miss beat Furman by 76-0, but there again, Ole Miss is a team that we've heard all offseason is projected to make a run potentially into the playoffs. Yeah, Alabama beat Western Kentucky 63-0, but that's Alabama and that's Western Kentucky. So you kind of got to expect a bit of a butt kicking on that one. Tennessee and Chattanooga 69-3, same thing. Tennessee is a team over the past few years that's been coming up, and they're getting better and better. Now, they haven't been able to close the deal and get into that playoff scenario there at the end of the season, courtesy of South Carolina for one of those. But they could be rounding the corner there. So I don't know. Maybe the blowouts are partially style points. Georgia Clemson 34-3. That game was closer than the score indicates, I think, until after halftime going into the third quarter when Georgia kind of really started to pull away. So I don't, you went to halftime 6-0.
Yeah, it was close for a while.
I think the talent gap between Georgia and Clemson really showed itself in the third and fourth quarter, and it was just Georgia's defense was just. I mean, their offense is great, but I mean, their defense is just absolutely smothering. I mean, and with Clemson being down, as many are saying that they are, it just wasn't a good matchup for the Tigers. Georgia just whipped up on them and kept on doing it. And then you got Oklahoma, Temple there again. These first week games, you don't expect much, right? It is the official first week of the season. But it's not what I look at as the first real week of the season. To me, the first real week of the season is when those conference games starts. When you get to those conference matches, that's when it's real now, because now you are playing for something that definitely matters. So, does Arkansas Pine Bluff come out against Arkansas and give their best effort, or are they just there to get a check? You kind of got to ask that question also. They're playing an entirely well, both, right. And you would want to show up and you want to win. And of course, these kids, they're not showing up with the intention of losing, but Arkansas Pine Bluff is playing in a much different level, a much different division of football than the Arkansas Razorbacks do. So are you going to throw all of your resources into trying to beat Arkansas in Little Rock? I mean, probably not. What are you going to wind up doing? You're going to get, 2 or 3 or 4 of your starters injured in a game that doesn't mean anything to your conference or your level of football to try and hang with Arkansas when they've say, a 4-touchdown lead. No, what's the point? You're not. So I think that's where a lot of these blowouts come from. One thing that we can say wasn't a blowout was South Carolina and Old Dominion. It was downright scary, as a matter of fact. And
I looked at the box score earlier, and Old Dominion was ahead by 3 points with 9 minutes and 54 seconds left. That surprised me.
I'll touch on that a little bit more when we get specifically into the details there with South Carolina. But to answer your question, no, I don't think that the SEC is down. I think that that's a narrative that a lot of people around the country would like to see happen, and they want to believe that it's happening. But I believe that in December, that narrative will look a lot different. And what you'll see again will be Georgia or Clemson or Ole Miss or maybe Tennessee or LSU. You're going to have a couple of those teams that make the playoff. And of the SEC, of the teams that aren't in the playoff, they're still going to be in pretty good bowls. So I don't see the SEC taking a step down or taking, being knocked down a notch or knocked down a peg. Certainly not while adding Oklahoma and Texas. If anything, that's a step up.
Yeah, and the teams that they lost to, Miami, Notre Dame, and USC, they're traditionally good teams. Notre Dame's in the top 5. We'll see how that plays out. But, they're not bad losses.
Well, and you got Vanderbilt.
Getting beat 41-17 is a bad loss, you could say, but it's not. It's to Miami.
You got Vanderbilt out there pulling off the upset against Virginia Tech. That was supposed to be one of the ACC's top half of their teams, and Vanderbilt's supposed to be the worst that we've got. And I don't know that I'd want South Carolina to go up against Vanderbilt right now.
Mm-hmm.
So South Carolina may be the new. That may be a battle between South Carolina and Mississippi State and Florida as to who's going to be the worst in the SEC this year. I don't know. It's so hard to tell after 1 week. You really need a 2 or 3 game sample size before you can say, yeah, okay, this team really stinks. Now, I think with Florida and their situation, the way that they finished last year and the way they're starting this year, I think we can say Florida pretty much stinks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Florida, not with that schedule they've got. I don't see Florida turning on the Jets and, pulling off 8 wins. I don't see it happening. And to be quite honest, I don't see South Carolina doing that either. So the SEC is still pretty strong. And there's certainly 2 or 3 teams, at least in the SEC, that you got to look at and say have a very legitimate shot of making it to the playoff.